A few months ago, a strange outbreak occurred worldwide. I escaped from Jiangcheng and formed a convoy with a group of survivors. We planned to head to the survivor base in Shanghu. Some drove modified off-road vehicles. Some were in buses. Only I was riding an old-fashioned 28-inch bicycle. Along the way, everyone had to remember two rules. First, do not fall behind. Second, stock up on supplies as much as possible. And the first rule always takes priority over the second, because without supplies, maybe someone will still save you. But once you fall behind, the only thing awaiting you is death. Originally, everyone placed their hope on Shanghu. It was one of the few super cities in the country. Everyone believed that there would be a way to deal with this disaster there. But before we even reached our destination, Shanghu had already become a no-man's land. When I found out about this, I made a bowl of steaming instant noodles, hoping to dilute the dead silence in the air. After finishing dinner, blood had completely covered the ground. Everyone lowered their breath to the minimum, afraid of disturbing the terror lurking in the darkness. I took a deep breath and tried to push down the tension in my heart. The rules of the apocalypse are simple. If you want to survive, you have to endure. So I lit my last cigarette. Let the smoke bring a bit of false peace. After smoking, I wrapped myself in a blanket and prepared to endure through the night. But when my hand touched the blanket, a line of text suddenly appeared in my mind. Upgrading the blanket requires 129 kill points. A few moments later, I realized that I hadn't awakened any so-called training abilities, but rather, I had gained an upgrade system. As long as I had kill points, I could upgrade anything I touched. Even the bicycle could evolve. But the joy didn't last long. Reality quickly struck me, because I didn't have any kill points. Fortunately, at that moment, new information appeared again. Since the host is using the system for the first time, you can borrow 300 kill points for a period of 1 month. I randomly laughed, laughing out loud. Tomorrow, I could be dead in the mouth of a ghost. The real fool is Wu, yeah? So I didn't hesitate to confirm the loan. 300 points in hand. I looked at the old bicycle. The first rule of the convoy was not to fall behind. To me, this old bicycle was my life. So, I decisively chose to invest all my kill points into it. The next moment, a sandglass appeared above the 28-inch bicycle. A 5-hour countdown slowly ticked down, until the sky began to lighten. The system's prompt suddenly rang, upgrade complete. With the faint light from the horizon, I suddenly realized that my bicycle had completely transformed into a tricycle. It not only had a spacious cargo bed, but the system had thoughtfully added a labor-saving device to the body. When the people in the convoy saw this, there was jealousy, greed, and surprise. Among their indifference, any supplies are more precious than life, let alone a tricycle that doesn't need a drop of gasoline. Once someone drove a car into the convoy, but once it broke down, that car instantly went from treasure to a liability. Now, only the two modified off-road vehicles in front could still drive steadily. It is said that there were some important people in those cars. The most eye-catching one was a young girl who always held a long sword in her hand. At this moment, a woman in yoga pants walked over, her eyes fixed on my tricycle. It was the gaze of someone sizing up prey. I didn't even need to speak. I knew exactly what she was planning, so I decisively rejected her. The woman was about to explode, but she was cut off by a man who trained by slamming into trees. That was Qiangzi, a fitness coach before the apocalypse. He immediately became exceedingly attentive, inviting the woman to sit on the rear seat of his bicycle. Only then did the woman's expression finally soften a little. Before leaving, she shot me a vicious glare, and even suggested to Qiangzi that he simply seize my tricycle. Qiangzi glanced at my hands, seemingly a bit wary inside. I couldn't be bothered with them. Strangely enough, today, the convoy was moving much faster than yesterday, but for me it wasn't stressful at all. The tricycle's labor-saving device made pedaling easier than ever. I could even feel a smooth, wind-like rush each time my legs pushed. Suddenly a row of houses appeared ahead. The survivors who'd been trudging with heads down instantly looked up. After all, many people's supplies in the convoy were nearly gone. Hardly enough to keep going. Since the apocalypse, most towns have become forbidden zones. The more densely populated the place, the more rampant the anomalies. Those of us who'd fled all the way from Jiangcheng didn't want to face those horrors again. If it had been nighttime, the convoy would definitely have skirted around this place. But it was daytime now, and daytime meant opportunity. Risk a charge with your life, and you might obtain no food and water. So the leading off-road vehicles suddenly accelerated, charging straight toward the town. The convoy seemed to ignite at that moment. Even the exhausted survivors on foot gritted their teeth and sped up. But the closer we got to the town, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. It was clearly broad daylight, yet it felt like a deep winter night. Even breathing carried an icy sting. One of the modified off-road vehicles at the very front suddenly slammed on the brakes, its tires screeching against the ground, leaving two deep black skid marks. The clamor vanished in an instant, as if someone had hit the mute button. At that moment I saw the whole town clearly. It felt as though an invisible iron hand gripped my guts. A cold chill shot from the solace of my feet straight to my head. The apocalypse had come. Anomalies had erupted worldwide. The survivors and I had arrived at a small town. But when I looked up at it, I froze completely. It was clearly 3 p.m., the sun still high overhead, Yet inside it was as black as a bottomless abyss, combined with the stench of rot and mildew in the air. Even a fool could see there was something seriously wrong here. While everyone hesitated in anxiety, a rough voice exploded. "Quit whining. I'm going in first." As soon as he finished speaking, a gigantic man over 2 meters tall squeezed his way out of a modified off-road vehicle. The moment his feet hit the ground, the entire ground trembled. It took me a second to realize how outrageous this guy was. Like a humanoid beast. He didn't care what anyone else thought. Instead, like an elephant, he charged straight for the distant supermarket. Immediately, the off-road vehicle behind him followed. Even more outrageous, an old man fired up his mobility scooter, swaggering and shouting, "You youngsters are useless. Wait till I come out. I'll be feasting on the good stuff." That holler riled everyone up. They swarmed toward the supermarket, but I didn't follow. I set my sights on the shops lining the street instead. The stock in shops might not be as complete as in a supermarket, but they're much closer to the exit. There's a rule in the apocalypse: survival depends on sunlight. Step into the sun, and those sinister things can't catch you. I grabbed my backpack and dashed to the entrance of a tobacco and liquor shop. Peering through the glass door, I saw a variety of cigarettes and fine wine inside, stacks of snacks and drinks, anything edible. I stuffed everything I could into my backpack. Just as I was feeling delighted, a chill suddenly ran up my spine. Behind me was a child who appeared to be around 7 or 8 years old. Its face was even whiter than a corpse that had been dead for 3 days. Its eyes and mouth formed an eerie, grotesque effect. I couldn't help but curse under my breath. I intended to leap over the counter and rush outside. But when I lunged for the door, I froze. The glass door had been barred from the outside with a wooden stick. Someone had intended to trap me here. I stared through the glass door, focused on the outside. At that moment, by the tricycle, stood a man and a woman. The woman was wearing tight yoga pants. She was the one I had rejected earlier. The man was her fitness trainer, Kyungzi. They had originally been looking at me with smugness and cold smiles. But when they saw the dark figure behind me, a small figure appeared dimly behind me. "Quick, let's go," Kyungzi said. The two of them immediately hopped onto the tricycle and quickly fled the scene. A childish voice echoed from the corpse-like place. "It is said that this eerie thing is called a paper skull. Once it attaches, death is inevitable." So without thinking, I immediately grabbed my sword. In the next moment, the sword pierced through its body. That small figure didn't move at all. Instead, its mouth cracked open, smiling wider and more eerily. The eerie, childish voice echoed behind me. If I hadn't been standing in the position where the sunlight entered, I might already be dead by now. In the apocalypse, a normal person against the eerie is an instant kill. But now, I was less than a meter away from that thing. If I wait a bit longer, the store will be completely engulfed in darkness. At that point, I'd be dead for sure. I quickly scanned the surroundings. There wasn't a single person with a weapon. So I firmly kicked the glass door. The glass door shattered with a loud crash. I charged outside. It was just after 4 p.m. The golden sunlight bathed me, dispersing the chill in my bones. In that instant, I felt like I was returning to life from hell. I looked back. The child remained still in the darkness of the tobacco shop, staring at me intensely. But I was no longer afraid. Because I stood in the sunlight, I grabbed my supplies and chased after the direction the tricycle had left. The direction where Kyungzi and the yoga pants woman went. It led to a large supermarket. I originally didn't want to go in, but now my tricycle was in their hands. I had to chase them. The sun was slowly setting in the west, and the shadows on the street were growing longer. In those shadows, I could almost feel countless cold eyes staring at me. Yes, Xinhua. Because of our arrival, some things were being awakened. When I reached the supermarket entrance, I saw the familiar tricycle at a glance. My things were still in the tricycle's basket. At that moment, murderous intent filled my heart, so I quickly emptied my backpack and reloaded it. Then, crouching low, I slowly approached the supermarket. But when I actually stepped inside, I found the situation was far worse than I had imagined. Most of the shelves were empty, and there were a few figures occupying a corner. They saw me, and immediately made an advancing gesture. Just as I was puzzled, a cold breath ran up my back. I saw a long-haired girl, dragging her feet, wandering between the shelves. She was at least 3 meters tall, holding a huge pair of scissors. Her mouth emitted a chilling voice. "Where are you? Come out, let's play together." At that moment, sweat poured from my forehead. Just escaped from the paper skull's grasp, and now, I ran into the scissor-wielding woman. I tried to avoid her gaze, and moved to another corner, but at that moment, I realized there were still quite a few survivors in the food section. Even that 6-foot-plus brute was there. Yet his face looked incredibly tense. The scissor woman suddenly stopped. 2 crimson points beneath her hair swung toward us. In that instant everyone froze. The air held nothing but the sound of our hearts. Luckily she didn't notice us. She merely kept walking away mechanically. Just as I exhaled in relief, ready to keep grabbing supplies, I bumped into the back of the survivor in front of me. Looking up, I saw everyone had halted. All eyes were fixed ahead. A child of 7 or 8 stood there in silence. It was the paper skull. A piercing scream shattered the supermarket's stillness. Also rousing whatever lurked in the dark, the white-clad scissor woman, over 10 feet tall, stiffly turned her head toward us. She charged in giant strides, shelves crashing down along her path. I grabbed my pack to run, only to see 2 survivors ahead, snipped clean in half by her shears. Hee hee, how nice. So much fun, she laughed, her laughter colder than steel. A moment later, a suited man with gold-rimmed glasses was likewise sliced at the waist. Right then, the 6-foot brute let out a thunderous roar. Damn it, fight. His muscles seemed to inflate in an instant. In a blink he was a tattooed hulk nearly 10 feet tall, muscles bulging like iron boulders. He matched the scissor woman's gaze, his aura no weaker. This was a sequence transcendent. An anomaly-ridden world where monsters cannot be killed, and only sequence transcendents can face them. And now he'd become a 10-foot muscle demon. The 2 giants turned the supermarket's food aisles into their battlefield. Only then did I understand why this sequence transcendent had wanted to tackle her himself. The muscle demon hurled punches at the scissor woman, but she caught them one-handed with ease. Though looking frail, the scissor woman possessed incomprehensible strength. She squeezed the demon's fist, as if kneading dough. Pain twisted his face. His massive body bent under her grip. I don't know what I was thinking. I slashed at her with my sword. I didn't hurt her, but I unexpectedly earned 200 kill points. Before I could celebrate, the scissor woman roared and charged me. Luckily, the muscle demon moved again. He hammered a fierce punch at her face. To my shock, she didn't budge in the slightest. Instead, she flung the demon away. His huge frame smashed through countless shelves. That's an anomaly. Even a so-called human miracle like a sequence transcendent is just a rag doll to her. Yet that massive body leapt from the fallen shelves and charged her again. An indestructible cockroach. He seemed completely unhurt. If he still wouldn't run, fine, then I would. While that big lug battled the scissor woman, I strapped on my pack and sprinted for my life. But the next moment, that familiar eerie child's voice whispered right beside my ear. I saw a pale child, clutching my pant leg. Just as despair washed over me, I noticed candy scattered across the floor. I grabbed a few pieces and handed them over. The paper skull hesitated, apparently shocked I'd actually produced candy. It didn't want to take them, but some rule seemed to force it to accept while it took the candy. I bolted for the supermarket entrance. All around, survivors were screaming for their lives. Pure chaos echoed everywhere. I glanced back. The paper skull was still lurking nearby, and in the distance, the muscle demon was once again knocked away. But soon he charged at the scissor woman again. Only when I stood back under the sunlight did I finally feel like I had returned to the land of the living. Meanwhile, inside the supermarket, screams and cries echoed throughout. The surroundings were filled with ghostly figures. Many survivors, running for their lives, were dragged back into the darkness by eerie figures. The entire Xinhua town's anomalies were attracted to the crowd. Only sunlight was the safest area. I sat down heavily on the tricycle and casually tossed the 2 bags I had brought into the vehicle. At that moment, I suddenly heard a very unfriendly female voice. Chen Yi, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to steal our vehicle? I turned and saw the yoga pants girl Jia and the fitness trainer Kyungzi, carrying the packages, standing not far away. I didn't say a word. Instead, I immediately cocked my crossbow. A crossbow bolt flew through the air and pierced Kyungzi's throat. Blood sprayed across the yoga pants. Kyungzi's eyes widened in disbelief. You've killed your enemy. You've earned 1,000 kill points. I was momentarily stunned. I didn't expect killing someone would earn kill points, so I raised my hand again. The yoga pants girl screamed and turned to flee. But compared to the eerie creatures, I was her worst nightmare. But before I could act, her scream echoed once again. The woman's face was covered with golden holes. Behind her stood a shadowy figure in a black cloak. As the woman neared the sunlight, the figure grabbed her hair and dragged her back into the darkness. By now, several survivors had just escaped and were frantically packing supplies onto their vehicles. They turned and fled. I also stood up, hopped on my tricycle, and ran. I didn't forget to grab the packages, tossing them into the vehicle. The apocalypse had arrived. Anomalies erupted worldwide. The survivors and I fled to a small town. But I never expected that just as we were gathering supplies, a scissor-wielding woman appeared from the darkness. In a critical moment, a sequence transcendent muscle man, over 3 meters tall, broke through the wall and blocked her. Taking this opportunity, I escaped the supermarket. By now, the sun had completely set. Shadows were pouring out of the streets. I pedaled my tricycle as fast as I could toward the town entrance. As everyone scrambled to escape, a white figure suddenly flashed across the rooftops. I merely glanced up and saw a wretched girl, like a swordsman from legend, heading in the opposite direction, towards the supermarket where the battle was happening. In the apocalypse, only sequence transcendence can face the anomalies, but I couldn't worry about that. I charged through the town's entrance, but soon, a large group of people surrounded me. They bombarded me with questions, but I couldn't be bothered. Most of them were women. In the apocalypse, the elderly and children have weaker stamina, so they have a harder time escaping anomalies. But it's the adult women who are more likely to survive, even though they're physically weaker than men. Therefore, the elderly and children have a hard time escaping when encountering anomalies. On the other hand, it is adult women. Although they are physically weaker and less fit than adult men, they are more likely to survive. And at that moment, a modified off-road vehicle stopped, and a man got out. The man was dressed strangely, wearing a hooded sweatshirt, loose-fitting cuffed pants, but he wasn't wearing any shoes. At this moment, he bent down, picked up some sand from the ground, and tossed it into his mouth to taste. The man's face changed immediately. He shouted loudly, "We need to leave now. If we don't leave, it will be too late." Several people around him immediately turned pale and scrambled to run back to their vehicles. It seemed like some great terror was approaching. Someone shouted in panic, "What about Nana and the iron corpses?" The man roared, "Don't worry, they'll catch up. Let's go, stop talking." Soon, the movement of these vehicles was noticed by other survivors. Someone panicked and even tried to block the convoy. "My husband hasn't come out yet. You can't leave us. Please, please. My brother hasn't come out yet. You can't abandon us." However, the modified off-road vehicles ignored these people's pleas. They hit the gas and sped off. I also prepared to pedal my tricycle to catch up. The off-road vehicles ahead were moving especially fast, and those without vehicles were quickly falling behind. Luckily, my tricycle had a labor-saving device, so I was able to keep up just barely. At this moment, a bus wobbled out of the town. I recognized this bus. It had been in the convoy. Before, it had been packed with people, but now it was much emptier. A survivor tried to stop the bus, but was instantly knocked away by the bus. His fate was unknown. I don't know why, but those people seemed to have lost their minds, rushing forward. But by this point, I was drenched in sweat. Even so, the convoy ahead was now just a faint light in my view. The heavy breathing behind me was getting louder. Clearly the survivors on bicycles were catching up. As for those walking survivors, I couldn't see them anywhere. I don't know how much time passed, but I finally saw that faint light again. They seemed to have stopped. A spark of hope ignited in my heart. Half an hour later, I finally rejoined the convoy. The people in the vehicles had already gotten out, setting up tents. I even saw the big guy being carried to the open ground. His left arm was severed at the shoulder. Blood soaked the grass beneath him. Standing beside him was a wretched girl and a barefooted man. About 5 minutes later, I started to feel a bit better, so I accessed the system. I discovered my current kill points were already at 1,200. After going through this disaster, I was sure the convoy had sensed some danger. To avoid falling behind, I decided to upgrade my tricycle to an electric one, so I checked the system's upgrade plan. I was surprised that the system quickly gave me a definite answer. In front of me, a 3D diagram of the upgrade appeared. According to the current upgrade plan, I needed 1,200 kill points, and the upgrade would take 15 hours. I only had just over 1,200 kill points. 15 hours was acceptable. Just as I was about to click confirm, I saw an abandoned motorcycle parked by the roadside. Such things were common in the apocalypse. A bold thought crossed my mind.